DHT. I was doing some digging on my ancestry. My school wanted me to do a project to find someone in our past that stood out to us. We had to make sure that to go back to at least the 17 or the 1500s. Many people found interesting things in their family's history. They were able to find out that they had ancestors with colorful pasts and intriguing jobs. Some were surprised to see that their families had various levels of income and were at different places in society. For me, I was able to go back to the 1700s and find a ancestor who was interesting. Thankfully, I was able to go back far because of the level of information on my family. The University of Stonehenge, my university was gifted a free trial by a company called Ancestry X. That was perfect because that was all that I could afford because I found out that my teacher had access to the premium version. She let me use her computer, and since she had the full paid version, I was able to look up my last name, Roswell. I was surprised at what I had found the results. There was a lot of non-interesting stuff in my family, but one person stood out. Ancestry X did not reveal the first name, but they did have an initial Z. They insist in the last name Roswell. I had found out some info on him, and that he was a real character. He was a Western outlaw from the 1700s. Z. Roswell was a notorious bank and stagecoach robbery. He lived a life of crime. It seemed like it suited him real well, because he was able to snatch up quite a lot of gold bars. Why he had so many gold bars, they said he was one of the most rich men in the South. They learned also that he was an arsonist because he set many buildings on fire. These wonderful buildings burned down because of him. It seemed like it was a pretty big villain because he did not stop there. He also took many family lives because he did not want there to be any witnesses. He would call them out one by one in the middle of the streets. He would shoot them down. Z. Roswell also had many affairs with many women in town. He fathered many children. He did not give the last a small snippet to his children, and to find out he was one of the great-great-grandchildren of one of his many mistresses. That was another interesting tidbit information to find out. I later found out something even more odd. He accidentally burned down a building with some families inside of it. One of the family members were able to escape the unfortunate fire that she had seen with anger. They say that she was a witch that had placed a curse on him and his family until the family line came to an end. I felt chills when reading this part of the story. I had to do some more digging and find out more. Was I cursed? Would I end up like some of my family members there? There was something weird and tragic incidents that took place in my family, but I never really thought anything about it because accidents always happen, right? Now I was getting a little bit more nervous and anxious. There were these different events connected. Did they really have something to do with my earlier ancestry? I trembled at the thought. After a little more digging, I found out that the curse of my family had skipped blood generations. This is mad sense because we didn't have all these problems. Only for some of us were faced with a tragic incidents, but it did follow a pattern. I had to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. So I did some more checking, and it had just so happened to be in my generation. My family was a little strange. I didn't think much of it, but there were some more arguments and a hint of dark clouds hanging in our room. You could feel it in the air, but it was not like we had abuse, domestic violence, or demons, that we were just more out there. My parents felt kind of strange and argued at which horror movies which would focus on a lot of bloody ones. And then they would also hone in on more violent westerns. I would also sometimes see them in their cowboy hats and sometimes have their cap guns shooting in the air. As of late, I was becoming more frequent. They would want to binge watch more of these shows and movies. They were more irritable, and it was like this every Saturday night. I thought most every family did something crazy, but now I'm not too sure. I think mine was a little bit more out there, if you know what I mean, but something strange was going on with me. Now I was getting the urge to start walking around at midnight and walking the streets looking for some type of trouble. I was totally unlike me. I was a simple person. I loved to read, take naps, and watch simple movies. I even meditated a little bit, but I did a little gardening, believe it or not. Now I had the sudden urge to be more outgoing, but it was more aggressive. When I was out at night, I would bring a spray can and start tagging some strange letters on walls, blocking other people's tags. Of course, I was doing more shady parts of town where more drug dealers and a lot of other shady stuff and other people. It was most fun to tag over other people's stuff. I would go on for a few weeks until one night I would get jumped by a guy. He's like, "You've been tagging my block?" Now we get into a little scuffle. I pull out his gun and shoot him, and I did not know what happened. I have no idea what came over me. And it happened so fast, I get this feeling I can't explain. So I get the body and I drag it off in the woods. I also dig a grave and put him in, and then I cover it up. I live my life as that night never took place. But then a few weeks go by and I get the urge again. So once again I go back out at midnight, at this time to a construction site, where I just sit and explore and do some tagging and whatnot. Some more. I'm in the mood. I'm waiting on my next victim. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe.